Vengeful Guardian Moonrider is the fourth and newest game from Brazilian indie developer Joymasher, makers of Oniken and the brilliantly titled Blazing Chrome. It's a side-scrolling action platformer that's kind of like the lovechild of a three-way between Shinobi 3, Mega Man and Ninja Gaiden. It's out tomorrow, or now depending on when you watch this video, for current and last gen. I was lucky enough to get my hands on a review code, and I have busted my ass to get this review done for launch. So, was it worth it? Is Vengeful Guardian Moonrider the quintessential cyborg samurai simulator? Well, that's what you're here to find out. Before I talk about what it's like to play, I want to quickly discuss the story, because believe it or not, this game actually has one. I could tell you in my own words what's going on, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to read the official blurb because it's nice and succinct. Here goes. Humanity finds an unlikely hero in Vengeful Guardian Moonrider's oppressed world. Authoritarians have built super soldiers as weapons of war, but their creators have sealed their fate by bringing the warrior known as Moonrider online. Conceived as a tool to uphold a totalitarian state, the Moonrider has rejected its intended purpose, instead choosing a relentless battle for vengeance against its creators and fellow super soldiers. Very dramatic stuff. The story is told through beautifully drawn pixel art cutscenes as well as in-game dialogue between characters. According to the developers, the development of this game was a massive struggle because it was created during the height of the pandemic. They've tried to include elements of their personal experiences of this struggle into the story, but don't worry, this isn't some deep think piece, and ultimately it has a positive message. Can I be honest with you? I know that I review quite a few indie games on this channel, and many of them have a retro flavour, so it might seem like this is my favourite genre. I actually love big shiny AAA games equally, if not more, so if I'm going to play something retro, it's got to be good. This is exactly the kind of throwback retro game that I like. It looks authentic and it plays authentically, but it doesn't feel like an antique. There's just enough here to make it feel like a modern take on an old genre and an evolution of the games we used to play as kids. The older ones of us anyway. As mentioned, this is an old school arcade style platformer. That means there's a focus on learning attack patterns and stage layout. It's a single player experience, and as we've come to expect from Joymasher, it's fucking punishing. The controls are simple but nuanced. You have a jump, an attack, and a special ability that can only be used a number of times before it needs replenishing. You have a run, a dash attack, a dive kick, and a basic combo. This might sound kind of limited, but mastering these requires some practice, and the game throws you right in the deep end. You basically need to master the platforming immediately, and you'll need to figure out how to deal with the various enemies quick smart too. The timing for the wall jump, for example, needs to be precise, and you'll have to master the dive kick into wall jump if you want to find those hidden goodies. The controls are responsive enough, although definitely not as sharp as something like Shinobi 3, but I never felt like death was a result of input lag. This game is hard, but I think it's much more forgiving than Blazing Chrome. I really suck at Contra-style games though, so make of that what you will. While the platforming and combat will test your patience at times, the game is generous with health and special ability pickups, and on the standard difficulty you get plenty of lives and unlimited continues. There are 8 stages in total, each with its own boss. The bosses are a real highlight, and when you defeat them you gain their special ability. Some stages have a number of sub-bosses too, and I enjoyed all of these. On top of the abilities you earn from defeating bosses, each stage has at least one upgrade chip to find. These act as modifiers that can do things like increase your range, give you a double jump, improve your armor, and so on. Some of the more powerful ones have trade-offs too, like reducing your stage score. Before you start a stage, you can choose any combination of 2 chips. No 2 stages are the same, so the chips you choose will probably change depending on which stage you're attempting. Each stage throws something new at you, whether it be enemies, a different method for getting around, or a mini-boss to figure out. Now, after completing the first stage, you can choose to tackle the remaining in whatever order you like. Some of them are long, brutal gauntlets, and others are relatively short and simple by comparison. On your first run, you'll have no idea which order to complete them in, but eventually you'll figure out where the upgrade chips are hidden and what abilities each boss gives you. This knowledge can be essential for beating some of the tougher bosses too. So if you get stuck on a tricky one early, you might want to try beating a different one instead, because their ability might help you with the boss that's giving you trouble. This adds an interesting layer of strategy and gives the game a huge amount of replayability. It also makes it a perfect candidate for speedruns. The art style, if it wasn't obvious, is based on the pixel art of the 16-bit era. The developers have used a limited color palette, similar to OG Mega Drive games. Animation is equally limited. It is well animated, it's just no Symphony of the Night. I would have preferred something a bit more flashy, a la the Ninja Savior's Return of the Warriors, but I get that this is the aesthetic they were going for, and when viewed through that lens, it does look great. If you're a fan of the faux scanline look, then this game has a really interesting one. It's much more heavy-handed than most I've seen. It even adds curved edges and warps the image to imitate the look of an old-school TV. What's interesting is that on my 4K display, it actually makes some of the text appear a bit sharper or more legible. Makes me wonder what it would look like on an actual CRT. The soundtrack is also pretty good. I really love the rock-inspired soundtrack of Blazing Chrome, and while I don't think this reaches the same heights, it still provides some quality 90s vibes. I had an absolute blast with this. It's difficult, but not ridiculously so, and if you aren't afraid of putting in the time to learn its mechanics and memorize some attack patterns, then this is a really fun game. The story is much meatier than I expected, there's a decent number of stages, and there's heaps of replay value. If you are hanging out for this one, or you just like action platformers / Metroidvanias, then do yourself a favor and give Vengeful Guardian Moonrider a go.